does self-care and leadership play together in the sandbox?
Oh man, it's very important. It's, different sides of the same coin to some extent. I think, when we say self-care, a lot of people think, oh, it's selfish. I don't have time for myself. I don't have time to take care of myself. So self-care is just this luxury that's only afforded to people who have time or money.
Mhm.
And I disagree. I think that taking care of yourself, maybe self-maintenance is a better word. It's prioritizing yourself so that you can make sure you are at your best in order to serve your community, your people, your family. You've got to take that time for yourself. And when I think of self-care, there are the luxuries of it. I mean, I love a good massage. I love, getting a pedicure done. But I think more of creating systems in your life so that you can manage your time and your energy and set boundaries so you can have more time for joy and connection, which automatically makes you less, and sleep, but it makes you less vulnerable to disease processes, less vulnerable to burning out, and keeping that healthy perspective, not just for the job, but for after the job, once you get out, once you retire, enjoying that hard-earned pension and all the work you've put into, and even being able to let go of the profession. Having, I say we all have a passion for the job, but passion is not sustainable. You have to translate that passion into a healthy attachment. So,
Mhm.
towards the end of your career, it's like a relationship. As that relationship comes to an end, it's this, how do you unattach from it in a healthy way so that you can move on to different things and enjoy your retirement? And I think self care really, creates a world where that's a little easier, and then it becomes a routine and a habit.
Mhm. And as someone who is literally experienced that and going through that, in the sunset of now your career, and what's the biggest lesson you've learned during this transition, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
It's so hard. It is like, I suck a good game, and it has been really hard. And so, let me see if I can unpack that a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, I retired at 46 years old. So I had 24, almost 24 years in, but I'm still not like quote unquote retired. I
Mhm.
left the fire service, and I left, working shift work for a lot of reasons, my health, my family. I was losing a healthy attachment to the job. And so, and a few other reasons, but I had decided, a few months before I retired, obviously, that, I need to start looking at something different. What else could I do? How could I pivot? And so I started to unwind my attachment to the job. And I thought, this will be great. I've given myself what I thought was enough time. And then I'm going to retire, and then I'm going to sleep. And that's going to be amazing. And I'm just going to focus on sleep.
Mhm.
But what happened was I freaked out. I retired, and then I was like in full on panic mode of, okay, now what do I have to do? I don't have a structure. I don't have, the go to work for 2 days, come home for 4 days anymore. And it was really hard.
Mhm.
And I was, trying to figure out my identity, even though I would have told you confidently that, my identity was not wrapped up in my job. I was not a firefighter. I'm so much more than that.
Mhm.
Well, again, easy to say in theory. And then when people are like, oh, really? What do you do for a living? It would really be cool to say, oh, I work for the fire service. And now I'm like, um, I work for myself. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel right. And so it took a lot longer than I thought it would to kind of reintroduce myself to myself and figure out that what authenticity, was really, it's more of a journey than a destination. And so on this next leg of my journey, what that looked like for me.
Wow, thank you for that bit of vulnerability there. No, that's I experienced the same thing. Because I made it 8 years, and I even struggle with, do I say I'm retired? It's like, who am I now in relation to this very strong piece of my identity that's still very much alive in me? And so,
Yes.
yeah, there really is a reckoning that we go through yeah, I think finding the edges of that piece of our identity and then walking around the unknown of the rest of the
Yeah.
identity and saying, where am I? And who am I in relation to this wonderful little piece that I have that is now kind of a memory? And so, yes, I totally agree with you. And I understand in my own transition, I admittedly probably took a few years for me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
um,
it's the grief. I really had to allow myself to grieve. And, grief is a mess and you can't control it and you can't control the waves of grief. So, significant anniversaries for me throughout my career,
mhm,
they hit a little differently, no different than when I lost, like when my dad passed away.
mhm,
Not all anniversaries hit the same, but it's still a grieving, and grieving is infinite. It's not linear, and sometimes it's two steps forward and one step back. So it was really making when I realized I had to intentionally grieve
mhm,
what was gone. And it's kind of weird to say that I was grieving my career, but it was also grieving the people that I worked with, because I will tell you, my last when I worked at my last organization, the
mhm,
people on my shift, I loved them. They
mhm,
were incredible. They were so amazing, and that was the hardest part, was to say goodbye to them. And we still stay in touch, but not seeing them, not laughing, not joking, that's what was the hardest part to let go of, was that connection.
mhm. Yeah, those bonds are unlike anything else in the
Mhm.
professional world. Um, I think you only know this if you've been in the fire service and then worked a civilian job. They were like, whoa, night and day. So
Yes.
I totally understand that. Yeah. And that sense of, yeah, the belongingness and the connection for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so let's touch on grief. I wasn't anticipating talking about grief, but let's kind of go there. Like, what's having now moved through this grief? What was your strategy? I heard intention, but what
Mhm.
else? Like, what else? What other tools or mindsets did you lean on to move through that?
I stopped resisting it. I stopped, like, my inner critic. I just had to put her in the back seat for a while, which I try to keep her in the back seat all the time.
Mhm,
But she can be a pain in the ass at times. So it was just recognizing that I had to say goodbye and grieve that loss of everything we just talked about.
mhm,
And so I cried, I cried. It felt funny at times. I've had a therapist, the same therapist, for several years. And so I upped our, conversations a little more frequent while I processed all of it. And it was just really kind of talking through it, letting it flow through me, giving myself a lot of grace,
mhm,
and just, recognizing that it's not a switch. You can't just flip it off and all of a sudden sleep restful every single night. And, the traumas and the memories are still there.
mhm,
And, just kind of acknowledging those and really letting it go after it washed through me. But I had to feel it. I had to feel every bit of it. And I couldn't sidestep it. I couldn't just, I would say throughout my career, and I think a lot of us do this, is we create closets or buckets or containers and we put them in. Like, I had the dead kid closet, I
mhm,
had the fire closet, and I had to clean out all of those closets once I left that career to really, let that go. And, um, it tested my spirituality, it tested my faith.
mhm,
Because there's just a lot of things that, I've seen and experienced that didn't make a lot of sense and created a lot of anger. So I think, just letting that go was, it was messy, but it was important to do. And it definitely, after getting through that messy stuff, it felt a lot lighter. And I feel like I could set down a lot of rocks that I don't need to be carrying anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that was visceral. Thank you. I felt that as you were describing it. So thank you. Thank you for that real.
Hmm.
Um, let's kind of on a lighter note, let's kind of circle back to did I read on your LinkedIn that you are working on some books on leadership and self-care? Is that true?
It is. So a great subject change. I love to write. Like that is my little, you go back and ask, 14-year-old Diane what she wanted to be when she grew up, it would
Mhm.
have been a writer first. Like I have love the arts in general, but writing, I've started journaling when I was about that age too. So I have, decades worth of journals that I have still. And I just, when my dad died, I've always said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And then when my dad died, I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book. And it's going to be, all the things I was in spite of him. And then after I grieved for a while, I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's not the book I want to write. But I do feel that, it's important. I have a unique perspective of leadership and, based on the profession. And I just have always, so I'm compiling all of these notes and, random thoughts in my journals and working towards getting them in a book on leadership. I also really like to write fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another side project. But I think I've given myself a lot of space, especially the last few months, to just find time to write.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wonderful. Yes, that's great.
I've
That,
had so I started a newsletter, six or 7 years ago now, and this email list where it's not every week because I'm not that consistent, but I just like to share wisdom and random thoughts and kind of lessons learned.
Mhm.
And, that over time has given me more confidence because take action first
Mhm.
to maybe collect them all and compile them in one space.
Oh, nice. So is that going to be the nonfiction book then? Are you going to is that your strategy for is it going to be a compilation of past
I'm not really sure yet. I think, yes, I feel like the nonfiction will probably be like leadership, maybe more towards a memoir of my experience in the fire service.
Mhm.
And then the fiction, I'm still kicking around ideas for that. I read all the time. And
Mhm.
so I'll finish a fiction book. I'm like, oh, that's really good. I wonder how do they figure that out? How do they get so creative? It's just a good escape. So I take writing classes, I take writing workshops all the time to just kind of explore, and I'm open to seeing where it will lead.
Mhm. That's fantastic. It is such a good outlet, and an exercise for our brains, and these creative inspirations come up to try and capture them. And I heard that you have journaled, but how is writing and self-care and leadership, where were can you mention some of the intersections maybe besides keeping a journal and sending a newsletter and now writing a memoir? Where else have you kind of leveraged writing in your leadership and your self-care routines?
Oh, sure. That's a great question, by the way. Um, I have found that just the act of writing and emptying my brain out every morning
Mhm.
gives me gives me energy, gives me purpose, and gives me like a way to figure out if I'm struggling with something. So I write, 3 pages at least every morning when I wake up. They're called morning pages. I learned this technique from Julia Cameron from her book, The Artist's Way. And what it does, it just it's a palate cleanser. So it may be random ramblings, and then I'll go back and read them maybe a month later. I'm like, oh, well, you look at that. I was really struggling with that, or I was really mad at that. So it creates that capacity for
Mhm.
myself to start the day. And I feel like when I get up and write and empty my brain, I have, a little more space to absorb things that I'm not expecting or things like difficult conversations. And I've been doing that for 4 years now. And it has also helped me to really be more clear and concise on what I'm thinking. It kind of gets rid of the fog, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, so that I have more clarity, more focus, more intention, and less reactivity,
Mhm.
because I have more capacity. So my fuse is a little bit longer. I'm not as short tempered, and I feel I can listen better and respond better.
Wow. That is a really powerful morning routine then. I mean, for 4
Hmm.
years, you've really dug with it and kept with it. And I completely agree. I think writing helps you, yeah, clarify. You're right. It's like the vomit of ideas, and then you can pick out the nuggets.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and I mean, I write letters to people all the time.
Oh.
So I have a whole like, if I just need to like forgive someone, like just get it off my chest, yet
Mhm.
I don't need to talk to someone to do that because your brain doesn't know the difference. So I'll write them a letter. And I've written some pretty powerful letters that release a lot of the energy attached to whatever the situation or the person is. I joke in my brain, I've got my security detail or my board of directors, which is like my ego and my critic and all the people that are there in theory to protect me and keep me safe. But I've written them letters too. Like, you guys
Mhm.
need to back off. You're not the boss. I understand why you're there and I appreciate you looking out for me, but I've got this. And so it may sound silly, but it's been really helpful to just there's a lot of freedom in that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I have a computer full of Dear Johns to all of my
Oh
past.
yeah.
That's a great closure method for
Yes.
any relationship that ends not in a way, because it does, like, you can really say what you need to say to that entity, to the
Mhm.
person, yes, yes to that. I think it's a great cathartic release.
Oh,
And
it is. I mean, for bonus points, if you don't want to hang on to the letters, you can burn them.
oh
That
yeah.
is fantastic. I highly recommend that. And it's, because forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you releasing it. And I think that, once I heard that, I was like, "Oh, I don't need, to hear them apologize. I just need to tell them to fuck off and let that go." And I feel so much better about it.
Oh yes. And I think that comes back to authenticity, of allowing yourself that space to be completely authentic in this letter that you know that they're never going to see. There's never going to be a consequence, but the
Mhm.
consequence for you is that radical authenticity. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, to burn, yes, put fire in it, of course.
I mean, it's safely, of course. One time I was doing a whole ritual because I had to let go. Like, I needed to release this
Mhm.
human from my life. And I did it in my bedroom because it was cold.
Mhm.
And I almost burned, I set my carpet on fire. I was like, oh God, oh no. So, be alert, obviously, be safe with it. Um, but it worked. I will just say it worked.
It does. No, thank you for, yeah, bringing that to light, that technique, because I think it is it's such a good way to allow reactivity in a safe space.
Hmm.
Especially,
Get the
yeah. So,
Yeah, get the anger out, let it go, release it, because no one else is hanging on to it, right? The other person or the other people that, are probably not hanging on to the emotion and the energy that you have. And that goes to not just relationships, but really anything, whether it's a, a bully at work or a misunderstanding or, whatever is heavy, it's easy to, think that they're feeling the same way, well, it's not your business either. It's not fair to take their inventory, but you have control over how you respond to it. So if it's writing it and burning it or flushing it down the toilet or whatever to release it, then that just helps you, which is the most important.
Oh, it is. Yes. Self-care 101. That is, and then it's very transformative, because after you do that and have that full release, then that
Mm-hmm.
clarity comes in. Then the calm, and you can maintain. So it is a tool for ourselves. Um,
Mm-hmm.
more so than anybody else. It's really for us. So that's a you know, good reminder for all
Thank
of
you.
us.
Thank you.
And yeah, I am curious, before we start to kind of wrap up and bring everything together, who is your intended audience for the memoir? Who are you writing for? Other women? Are you writing for people in the fire service? Who do you imagine as the people who will be reading your nonfiction book?
That's a fascinating question. And I think the answer is I'm writing it for myself,
Mhm.
and I'm writing it to share what I've learned and to continue that healing, grieving process.
Mhm.
And then when I release it, whoever reads it is fantastic. And if they can interpret the stories and the journey however they wish, um, and that's not mine to control.
Mhm.
So I'm writing it for me, and if it resonates with people afterwards, that'd be fantastic. And whatever they can take from it, or whether it's nuggets of wisdom or shared, experience, that's fantastic. That's the beauty of art.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. And writing a book does do that for you. I speak from experience. So, and it does, you write it for yourself primarily. So excellent. I love that you're already tuned into that, and you recognize that the value of the process is the process.
Hmm.
So wonderful.
Amen.
Yay. Do you have any closing thoughts before I ask for a resource? Any last ideas or things you want to share with everyone today about things we've talked about?
Um, I don't this has been a great interview. I appreciate the platform that you're creating, and really giving people the tools to take command of their own lives and preload, what's going to happen. I think is just a wonderful gift. So thank you for your hard work and dedication to do this for the fire service.
I appreciate it. Thank you for those kind words. And what one tool, resource, book, mindset, tidbit would you like to leave the people watching today? What would you like to leave them with?
Well, there are a ton, but I think that the book I just recently finished is called The Person You Mean to Be by Dolly Cho,
Okay.
Chough, and I'll send you the link to it. And it's a fantastic book about viewing how you view yourself, how you view the world,
Mhm.
about our biases, unconscious and conscious. And she just does a really beautiful job of explaining how that works. And I found it to be a great book that it wasn't boring. I listened to it pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And I just think it's a good tool as, we focus more on belonging in the fire service, and, the fact that when you're in the fire service, you have to be a good tactician at what you do, but you also have to be a good roommate, and you have to live well with people and really influence the culture. And I think this book is a great tool to offer a really good perspective on how to do that.
Oh, fantastic. What is Dolly's background? Is she a therapist, a scientist? Like what?
I think she's a PhD. I'm not entirely sure of the details. I believe she's a PhD and has done a lot of research on, DEI stuff. So it's a DEI book, but it doesn't read like a DEI book.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's such an important topic. So, but I just think expanding cognitively is kind of where I'm really hoping, and everything I do is geared towards that, of let's just continue to grow cognitively, continue to increase our ability to view things from different perspectives, because that it benefits all of us. And it's the fire service, and then it benefits the people we serve too. It makes us more able to serve people of all ages, races, genders, situations, because we've run into some really interesting characters in the community of the people that we serve, and just approaching them from a human level as opposed to any other level. So
Absolutely. I think curiosity, like I said earlier, curious over judgmental, and really adapting that growth mindset that, you know, you are not a failure. You can't be a failure. Failing is an act, and you are human. And so, really, just framing your mindset in a way that is intentional and growth oriented, curiosity over judgment. It doesn't eliminate you from having to do your own work and taking care of yourself and keeping, doing your own house cleaning internally. But it is a really great start and can really help set a foundation. Even if you choose not to go down a leadership path, it will help you be a better human.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And thank you so much, Diane, for sharing all of your insights today. You just have a wealth of experiences and just beautiful revelations that you've drawn from your own life. So thank you for courageously living the way that you have and sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
And as
You're
always,
welcome.
Thank you to everyone who has been watching today. And if you're still with us at the end of this interview, know that my door is also always open to you. If you have feedback, questions, concerns, just want to say hello, you can reach out to me at info@firepowerx.com. And as always, I will link the book that Diane has recommended below the video today, and any other resources that she passes along to me. They will all be available to you at the time that you're watching this. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next time.